Hey, honey,
Yes, Barry?
let's get out of here.
Where are we going?
Where do we always go?
Fascina el viento, este ritmo de palmas, sin mi naturaleza, hasta encontrar la playa. Por eso grito al mundo, yo soy de Puerto Vallarta. Samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de arrullo en el mar. Samba de Puerto Vallarta.
Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to this episode of the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. I'm your host, Barry Kessler, and I'm just so happy to be introducing you to my favorite vacation destination. Hey, maybe it's even yours, and that's Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. That music you're listening to is performed by Alberto Perez, and Alberto is the owner of the Lapa Lapa group of restaurants. Those are the Lapa Lapa, Puerto Vallarta's oldest restaurant on the famous Los Muertos Beach, and the El Dorado Restaurant Beach Club right next door. So you can enjoy that fantastic view of the Los Muertos Pier, all lit up at night in beautiful colors, or during the day in its grand splendor for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, seated with your toes in the sand right at the water's edge. It's so romantic. It's so Puerto Vallarta, my friends. This week we are going to visit my buddy Roger Alaska. And Roger used to own a restaurant in Puerto Vallarta. It was called Alaska Diner. Roger has some great stories to tell, but before we get to him, let's see what's happening in Puerto Vallarta this week, the 5th of March, 2021. Well, Semana Santa has been canceled again due to the pandemic. Here's the report sent to me by Salvador the Candyman on the Malecon from Vallarta en Línea. For the second year, restrictions are there for Easter, no clubs, no parties, and limited beaches. The Jalisco Government Health Board decreed new restrictive measures aiming at protecting the health of the population from COVID-19, which will take effect during the Easter holiday period that's about to begin. It's about restricting the hours on beaches of the entire state, including Puerto Vallarta, so there will be only access to these from 5 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon. In addition, the cancellation of all mass pilgrimages or customary religious or patron saint festivals is again ordered. Also, restaurants and bars are instructed to close at 11 at night and keep the capacity limit at 50% with social distancing between the customers. Likewise, clubs and nightclubs, as well as bars at night or casinos on a night shift, will not be able to provide their services again, so they will have to stop operating. This is the second year that the festivities are canceled at Easter. Last year, when the pandemic practically began, there was no tourism, as the authorities ordered a total quarantine and asked travelers not to leave home. Now, given the recovery period, the arrival of abundant tourism to Puerto Vallarta is expected. However, the impact on travel plans that these new restrictions may have is unknown. Currently, clubs and bars can open, and the beaches are not limited, since, as promised by the governor of Jalisco, Enrique Alfaro, there will no longer be any more emergency buttons, and restrictive measures would only be applied on special dates, which are Easter, Mother's Day, and the elections, announcing them well in advance. And the article wraps up, as soon as Easter is over, the restrictions will be lifted. Of course, that's because science. And I have a link to that uplifting article in Vallarta en Línea in the show notes. And I want to thank Salvador Estrada for sending me that link, I think. Canadian travel is different, as we've been talking over the last few weeks. We've been talking about the new rules for travel from Canada to Mexico. That, of course, we talked about all Canadian airlines agreed to stop flying to the sun destinations. I like how you Canadians say Mexico and the Caribbean, you call it sun destinations. Anyway, Canadians returning to Canada are required to have proof of a negative PCR test upon arrival in Canada. And then once they get there, they need to submit to another one, wait up to 3 days in one of their beautiful handful of their detention hotels, which they set up with security so that you're properly locked down. They give you 3 squares a day delivered to your room. They probably slide it under the door. I don't know. But all that for around $2,000 or so for the 3 days. And then once you're cleared, as per your PCR test, then you mosey on home and finish your 14-day quarantine. Now, last week I told you that it was getting cheaper for Canadians to dare to travel to Puerto Vallarta. I mentioned that the price for these stays at Canada's new Motel 19 were cheaper than the $2,000 that were predicted by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Actually, as cheap as $319 a night, plus taxes for some people, for the singles. Now, remember I said stay tuned? Remember I said that? Stay tuned if it gets cheaper? Well, here goes. First, there's a suggestion from a Canadian traveler. I spoke with him, and he says, now, this is what I overheard. It may or may not happen, but you might want to try this. He says this is a tip for Canadians returning to Canada by air and staying in the government-approved hotels. Book your 3 nights as 3 separate one-night bookings instead of a single booking for 3 nights. If you book that as a single booking and check out early, they won't refund the extra days. Now, I overheard a guy in line ahead of me at the airport saying that he booked 3 separate nights, and the customs agent accepted that. If you book separately, you might have more luck with paying only for the nights that you stay. I got my COVID test after my arrival, and my results were available in less than 24 hours. I stayed 2 nights just because it's convenient for my ride to pick me up this day, but I could have checked out 1 night earlier. Instead, I paid for 3. So that's a good suggestion. You might want to check that out, see whether or not that will be allowed. I think that's a great suggestion. Anyway, another one I found here is where people are just walking through. They're just bypassing the Motel 19, and they're opting for the fine, which is a fraction of the price and the hassle of staying in a veritable jail cell, right? Here's the story. This is from the Canadian Press. International travelers arriving in Mississauga's Pearson Airport are bypassing new government hotel quarantine protocols by simply walking out of the airport or choosing to take a fine. Peel police have confirmed that they are not detaining or arresting people who leave the arrival area, as well others who refuse to take the mandatory COVID-19 test or book the quarantine hotel upon arrival are opting to receive a fine that's cheaper than the quarantine cost and then are released to go home. The fines are usually around $820 range, while staying at an approved quarantine hotel could cost as much as $2,000. Incoming travelers to the airport told Insagua.com that on Monday, several people just walked out of the arrival area after discussions with police and airport officials when they were confronted with the new rules now in place that call for testing and quarantine. When asked, Peel Police said that there were several instances of noncompliance with the new regulations on Monday, but that a majority were resolved after discussions with the people in question. Some issues of noncompliance resulted in the issuance of fines and other enforcement activity. Police went on to say that unless there are serious aggravating circumstances involved, such as an offense under the criminal code or any other demonstrated behavior that places the individual or public in danger, they will not detain individuals who are non-compliant. New rules that came into effect yesterday call for residents flying back into Canada to show a negative COVID test result before they board the plane, take another test when they arrive. After the second test, residents will have to wait in an approved hotel for their test results. If a person's results come back negative after 3 days, they will be able to quarantine at home for the full 14 days, and the quarantine will be mandatory and enforced. Anyone who tests positive for COVID-19 will be required to immediately quarantine in designated government facilities. I guess that's detention camps? I don't know. What is that, Canadians? What is that? The Canadian government officials said that those who leave the airport without taking the test are quarantining or at an approved hotel who aren't otherwise fined will be liable for a follow-up investigation. Knock, knock, knock. And could face hefty penalties. So, anyway, check out the story in the show notes. If you want to share that story with your friends and family, you can certainly do that. And of course, you can find that at www.PuertoVallartaTravelShow.com. Time marches on, and the legalization of the hippie lettuce should be coming soon to Mexico. And listener and contributor extraordinaire James, he sent me this article from the Daily Beast. Now, I'm going to read you parts of this article, and I'm going to link it in the show notes. And hey, now I've gotten some complaints that I talk a little bit too much about weed on the show. Now, look, remember when I talked about those guys in the Malecon or on the Tile Park, selling cigars and pipes and weed and hookers and blow? You know those guys. Yeah, well, some of you wrote me and you complained. Now, look, I don't want to sound rude or anything, but if it's not interesting to you, there's this thing for you complainers. There's this button on your podcast app. It's called Fast Forward. Use that. Use it. All right, now where was I? Oh, yeah. The article from the Daily Beast. It goes on. It reads, the Sinaloa cartel is setting up front operations to hijack Mexico's new legal pot market. Imagine that. Cartel farmers tell the Daily Beast that they are importing stronger and more lucrative strains of marijuana to sell in the legal market and maximize profits through front operations. This article is written by Luis Chaparro. This was dated January 26, 2021. Culiacan, Mexico. It is considered the most powerful criminal organization in the Americas, if not the world, but now the brutal Sinaloa cartel is preparing to get legit and make millions of dollars through front organizations in Mexico's new legal pot industry. Cartel operatives told the Daily Beast they hope to transit from the illegal market to the multi-million-dollar legal weed market as soon as Mexico passes reform to legalize marijuana for adult use. Proponents of the drug reforms had hoped legalizing the sale of narcotics would take the profits out of the hands of killers and criminals, but members of the Sinaloa cartel are already working on infiltrating the legal market. The result could be even greater profits for the gangland bosses to spend on weapons, buying off political people, and growing their criminal empire. For legitimate businesses preparing for legalization of marijuana, which is expected to pass later this year, there is now the alarming prospect of competing with the cartels. Ooh. One of the first changes as the Sinaloa cartel prepares to compete on the open market is the introduction of much more powerful marijuana. Mexican farmers working with the Sinaloa cartel in remote areas told the Daily Beast that they're already dropping old techniques and adopting a sophisticated process that includes genetically modified crops and fertilization systems to produce more potent weed. Some inside the Sinaloa cartel are exploring ways to set up legal shops under frontmen, according to cartel members. Inevitably, some of the more powerful crop could also end up on the black market or smuggled into the U.S. We are now leaving the old Mexican marijuana aside. Our bosses brought new seeds from Germany for us to grow a better quality weed and ordered to start harvesting this new weed strain, said Sinaloa cartel farmer interviewed by the Daily Beast. According to the farmer, the plan for the Sinaloa cartel is to start experimenting with advanced techniques and top-notch seeds to be ready to deliver paperwork as soon as Mexico passes its new law, and using front operations make out they have never been in the illegal market. Mexico's Senate passed a bill in late November legalizing recreational use of marijuana, but lawmakers in the lower house stalled it while trying to raise the amount of pot consumers may carry in public over the actual proposed limit of 28 grams. The bill to legalize adult weed is currently waiting for approval from the lower house, with the deadline set for April this year. In January, Mexico's health ministry published rules to regulate the use of medical cannabis, a huge step to create the largest legal weed market in all of Latin America. The new law sets rules for cultivation and harvesting of cannabis for medical purposes, which would allow businesses to grow marijuana legally on Mexican soil. This is where some drug cartel members want in. The bosses are ready with lawyers and everything. They've been watching closely the development of weed legalization and are ready to establish a legal business, the pot farmer said. Another man, allegedly in charge of the crop, said they will still have cheap marijuana harvests, but mostly for local distribution. Our weed is getting stuck in stash houses in the U.S. It's not selling as before. We still sell, but not as much as before, since they legalized it in some places. But we're trying to make a more potent weed, more kicking to sell in Mexico and in the U.S., wherever they want it, the cartel operatives said. And although there is still U.S. demand for Mexican weed, seizures at the border have been dropping steadily since 2015, according to Customs and Border Protection stats. While in 2015, the U.S. seized more than 600,000 pounds of weed at the border. 5 years later, in 2020, the number of pot seizures dropped to less than half, down to 290,000 pounds. The Sinaloa cartel members interviewed on the outskirts of Culiacan are taking care of an unusual marijuana crop, 8,000 square meters, 50 acres, under a greenhouse roof with an irrigation and fertilization system. This was not useful before. Here in the mountains, the weed grows by itself, but this is different, the farmer said. This scenario has become more and more common in northern Mexico, a change from the traditional outdoor cultivation. The farm is in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by a deep forest. The farmers have cut out the trees surrounding the field to leave room to install a metal structure as a roof from where the halogen lights hang. Inside, the smell of fresh weed and some citric terpenes, reminiscent of citrus fruit, fills the whole greenhouse. This looks nothing like the average illegal field in Mexico. These new strains, unlike the traditional varieties, do not rely on sunlight. The halogen lights vary from cold to warm temperatures depending on the stage in the growing process, and they remain on 24/7. In 2010, the Mexican Army found a similar greenhouse containing more than 20,000 marijuana plants. Years later, inside a building in Culiacan, authorities seized another greenhouse with more than 600 plants. In 2015, another sophisticated greenhouse was found in Guadalajara. We are learning. We bring the equipment from the U.S., most of the seeds from Europe, and also from the U.S., like the California Dream. These new plants are more potent. They test up to 60 to 70% THC as compared to the 5 or 8% in the Mexican ones, the farmer said. And what the Sinaloa cartel is planning might not be too far from the general idea behind the bill to legalize marijuana. The war on drugs has left hundreds of thousands of victims, and the new approach is designed to reduce the violence of the cartels, according to Zara Snap, co-founder of RIA Institute, a Mexican research and advocacy organization. What this new bill is trying to do is to have the people, groups, or organizations that have participated in an illegal market to transit into the legal market. If there are groups trying to transition, that's great. That's the whole point, said Snap. She insisted that the plan wouldn't grant any immunity to criminal organizations or individuals just because they were also selling illegal drugs. If these groups or organizations are still participating in illegal activities, like the use of unauthorized guns, the Mexican government has a responsibility to act against them, she said. But realistically, the cartels are not planning to go straight. The murderers, blackmail, and lawlessness will continue. They're simply demanding their slice of a more profitable market. While an average price for a pound of Mexican brick pot is around $500, A higher strain could be up to $2,500 a pound, according to U.S. officials. Mexican Senator Julio Menchaca, co-author of the bill, said regularizing cannabis in Mexico would be a big hit to the cartels. This is an opportunity to pacify the country, since the production of this plant has built mafias with a huge economic power that has caused Mexico a lot of violence, he said in an official statement. But cartel members are not so sure that they'll be stopping their operations on the illicit market. The group has a lot of other activities we have to in order to survive. It's still not sure if weed is going to get legal in Mexico, and we can't stay waiting for that to happen, said the Sinaloa operative. One thing for sure, Mexican cartels will try to be in the game. While it seems like a good idea on paper, pacifying the country does not seem that easy. The cartels in Mexico have gained most of their power not by selling weed, but by showing off their violent and ruthless hunger for money. And I have a link to that article in the show notes. And you know, I seem to remember guys like former Mexican President Vicente Fox and that big mobile phone giant Carlos Slim. I remember they were jockeying for position in the illegal pot trade in Mexico, you know, to make it look legitimate, like in the U.S. and in Canada. In Canada, the government runs their own stores, and in the U.S., they just collect oodles of taxes from the pot stores that they collect from their customers. But in Mexico, it looks more like the cartel is looking to get the upper hand. Look, at least good weed is on the way. Now, last week we talked about Vallarta sunsets and why they're so beautiful, and we talked about air pollution. We talked briefly about this stove, this special stove. Estufa in Spanish is stove, and this is called Estufa Pazzari, which are stoves that were introduced into homes and communities that improve the health and the air quality in the area and the health of the ladies that were, cooking in their homes. Now, I don't have time to talk about the project this week, but next week we're going to do it. I've been doing a deep dive. It's very interesting. These Pazzari stoves, and we'll talk about that next week. So, let's get right over to our interview, shall we? I love to talk to people who have literally left behind their lives in the United States or in Canada or anywhere in the world and then planted themselves in paradise in Puerto Vallarta. It's because deep down inside, that's something that I would really love to do. I would love to do the same thing. I think maybe a lot of you people who are listening would also love to do the same thing. I also like to seek out people who have taken a chance and opened up a business in a foreign land. They seem to have, the best stories, really. This next guest has a bunch of them. His name is Roger. Roger Alaska. He adopted the name of one of the states that adopted him. He had a restaurant in Puerto Vallarta, which is now closed and has been for a few years now. But I've always wanted to get this expat in and hear his story. I wanted him on the show. He lives in the same building as JR does, and I waved to him when I walked past his door on my way up to see JR, but I finally coaxed him into talking with me and sharing with all of you what it was like to plan on moving and following up with that plan and following your dreams. And that's exactly what Roger did. Also, what it's like to plan and to open and to build a business in Puerto Vallarta, like a restaurant, and what it might be like to retire from all of that while he was here in Puerto Vallarta. So let's go right now. Let's hang out on the patio right in front of Roger's condo in Colonia El Coloso in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Let's meet Roger Alaska from the Old Alaska Diner in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Roger, thanks for coming on the show today.
Well, thanks for thinking of me.
You got it, man. Where are you from, and what was your path that led you to Puerto Vallarta?
I was in Seattle for a long time as a audio engineer, performing musician. Ended up in Hoonah, Alaska for a year and a half before I moved to Juneau for 15 years.
Okay, Juneau. What were you doing in Juneau?
I was a restaurant and bar manager in Juneau and catering specialist. And I was in the airport of Juneau, Alaska, where I met the people from Alaska Airlines who started getting me tickets to Puerto Vallarta.
Ooh. All right. So this was when? This was what year?
This would have been first year Puerto Vallarta, 99.
Uh-huh.
I thought on that first trip that I was going to move to Puerto Vallarta and open up a bar with a stage for live music since I was a musician.
Okay. That sounds good. It sounds something that would come out of some guy that would actually move to Juneau, Alaska.
Yeah. Well, it was a little more frightening when I was in Hoonah, Alaska first because there was 900 people there.
Oh.
Yeah. The day I moved out, the mayor went to the sign and wrote $8.99 on the sign.
All right. So did you do that?
I had a 7-year plan.
Okay.
And while I was working at the airport in Juneau as the manager, I was getting trained a lot. They always sent me to classes. Huge corporation owned the business. The current name is Urest Support Services, but they had different names then.
Okay.
And they do catering in hospitals and prisons and airports and all kinds of stuff. They own all these facilities like that. Mm-hmm. And so that's why they were controlling us. So instead of giving me a raise, they would give me more education. And they'd send me to Bellevue, to Seattle, to other places all the time, Anchorage, for classes. So I had these classes on how to build a business proposal and how to a business plan on how to open a business that might succeed.
Right. And this one happened to be in Mexico. Did they mention anything about business in Mexico at this point?
No, not at all.
Okay.
In fact, almost everything I learned didn't apply down here.
Yeah. I figured so much. So, 7-year plan, that probably involved you just getting ready and ramping up and selling your stuff and getting ready to get out, or what?
Oh, all of those things, but those were all in the final time. While I kept coming down 2-3 times a year because I was getting discounts from my friends at Alaska Airlines.
Yeah.
So I'd fly for super cheap, and I discovered the economics of Old Town, the economical hotel zone, place like that. And I would come down and I'd ask all, especially gringo bars, but I'd ask them all questions. How long does a fuel tank last? What's your electric bill? Does anyone ever poach your electric? Are people like stealing your electricity from you or your water? And I was asking just questions. I had a clipboard I carried for probably 5 years. I just kept having more and more questions. Sam's Club had opened, and I went to Sam's Club and walked around and just priced everything I could to see what it might cost to open my restaurant, to outfit the restaurant. I did this for years.
Wow. Yeah, that's it was kind of an obsession. It sounds like to me, but you have to do that, right? You really planned. You really planned.
I planned. I overplanned. I got screwed over often by people that were smarter than me or more clever. Even though they might have had like an 8th grade education, they still got the best of me. And it was a great learning experience. It was tough.
Okay.
I got hoodwinked by a lot of people.
Yeah, like in what way? Give me an example.
A guy that was doing my construction. Once I found the location to start Open Alaska's Diner, the guy doing all the construction was robbing me blind and buying all kinds of tools for himself and everything else. Uh-huh. So when it was all done, I'd held back a bunch of money. And when it was time to settle up for the final amount of money, he gave me this list. And I said, well, I'm not paying for that. That's a wrench. That's a crescent wrench. And he goes, no. That's the valves for the sink, because it's the same word.
Okay.
Llave. And I go, no, that's an adjustable crescent wrench, and I'm not paying for that. So I went down the list, and I had a friend who spoke English, a Mexican friend, kind of like my helper.
Yeah.
And we went through the list, and we knocked off 2,500 pesos worth of stuff. It was 10 to 1 back then for the peso.
Oh, yeah.
So I owed him like 3,000 pesos, and we reduced it by 2,500 pesos of everything that he stole from me.
Wow.
I go like, what, cans of spray paint? You didn't do any painting for me. You were doing projects on your own. So that was one of the examples. Another example would be that particular guy could go to the plumbing shop and order a whole bunch of plumbing parts or electrical parts, the other electrical shop, and they give him a false receipt that he comes back and I pay him that money. And then one time I had a bunch of light sockets, and they were just crap. When I unscrewed the bulb from it, the whole socket fell apart. First time I'd ever had a bulb in. So I took back all my sockets, like 6 of them from hanging lights, to the shop, and the woman at the shop is going like, "No, that's not the right ticket for this. That's the wrong ticket." And the guy's going, shut up. And he pulls her into the other room, and they come back out, and they go like, "How can we help you?"
Ooh, that's how you discovered it.
So then they decided to give me the legitimate ones. "We'll give you this more expensive one at no extra charge." So I found out that the contractor guy that was working for me, had a secret account at all these places, and it wasn't uncommon for all kinds of cement guys and electrical guys and plumbing guys to have a secret account of credit when they were like screwing over a customer like me.
Wow, interesting. Okay, so let that be a reminder to you guys. Maybe asks these people if you can go buy the parts, and rather than having, send them off and buy them themselves too.
Going along with them would have been a great idea, which I never thought of then because I trusted everyone.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay. So there you go. That's great advice. All right. So you were in the middle of building Alaska Diner. Where was that?
That was in Old Town on Lázaro Cárdenas, near the Mercado Emiliano Zapata.
Okay.
Which is in the colonia of Emiliano Zapata.
Okay. So what's there now?
A guy from Canada bought the building and did a rather amazing remodel to it, just made it really pretty and added a couple floors to it. And the bottom part, any day now, is going to be an art studio or art gallery. And the next 2 or 3 floors are Airbnb or some kind of living quarters.
Oh, cool. All right. So what was the address there?
515 Lázaro Cárdenas.
515 Lázaro Cárdenas.
Right.
And what'd you serve? What'd you serve over at Alaska Diner?
I served international food. I served everything but Mexican food because I didn't think Mexican food would be difficult to find.
Well,
and
good
so
point.
I had what I called a tortilla-free restaurant. So my specials were French, Italian, Thai, Filipino, Chinese, Japanese, and American. And my normal menu consisted of things like shepherd's pie and steaks and fish and chicken wings and chili dogs.
Wow.
So
I'm getting hungry, brother.
Yeah, it was an interesting menu. I graduated from French culinary school, actually at the top of my class, and so I got a bunch of stuff under my belt, and it was just hard to put it out. But eventually, when I was doing specials, I would sell more specials than menu items. I had about 30 specials I rotated.
Okay. All right. And that's how you drew your clients. What do you think was what was the signature dish over at the Alaska Diner?
Probably shepherd's pie and chili dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy,
Right.
simple, right?
Right.
Simple.
But my dinner specials, my Thai and Italian and French and things like that, I sold out on those all the time. There's jokes about I got to Alaska's Diner and the special was sold out again.
And that was a joke because everyone knew that would happen.
Show up early.
Yeah.
Right. People would show up at 9 o'clock and ask for the meatloaf. And I go, well, everyone ate that at dinner time.
Yes, people are slow and late around here. All right, so in building the Alaska Diner itself, you ran into those problems with the people who were in the middle of building your place. Any other issues? Were there city issues, or was it pretty simple to get your permits and do stuff like that?
No, I had a temporary permit for 14 months because I wouldn't pay, in my opinion, I wouldn't pay bribes. So for 14 months, I had a temporary permit. I would go into City Hall to apply for my permit, and 3 different desks would say that they each need the original of some kind of document.
Oh.
And I said, there's only one original, and the 3 of you can't have it. And I said, I'll give all of you a copy. And they would get all mad at this. And I usually had a helper for Spanish. And I had a gal Friday who helped me find my location because I would hide around the corner while she went in. She was Mexican, bilingual. So I'd hide around the corner because I suspected there might be a little bit of prejudice about thinking the white guy from America is loaded and stupid. And it hurt my feelings that this was true. So I would hide around the corner. She'd go in and ask him all these questions and then set up an appointment for me to come meet the guy. I'd come meet the guy, and he would change the facts. He would add 1,000 pesos to the rent, or he'd say, oh, but you have to do this and that. He just changed all kinds of things. And so she'd grab my arm, spin me in a circle, and would walk out the door. Wouldn't even say bye-bye. And they would never say, wait, come back. Even the big beer company, the biggest beer company in the country, when I went there to open up with them, they kept saying, oh, we can't do anything for about 3 months. Oh, you want tables? That'll take us 3 months. Oh, you want help with a license? That'll take 3 months. And they kept saying this. So finally she goes hey, he just wants a bribe. And we're not going to pay a bribe. So she says to him 2 words that weren't happy birthday, and grabbed my arm, and we stood up, we turned around and walked out the door. And the guy never said, wait, come back, come back. So then we went to the other beer company and told them the same story, and they couldn't stop saying, what else can we do for you? How else can we help you?
Yeah. So what was that other beer company?
First one was Corona people, the Modelo group, and the second one was the Tecate people.
Okay. So you became a Tecate customer.
Right.
Yeah.
And everyone wants Corona, especially all the people from the U.S. and Canada. They all want Corona products because that's the only names they know.
Yeah.
And they're both just beer. They're just a bunch of Mexican beers.
Sure. Sure. So it was just Tecate. What else? Does Tecate represent any other brand?
Oh, yeah. Tecate had Dos Equis and Tecate and what were the other brands they had? Sol. That's a big one. Yeah, they had the Sol. Yeah. Sol was their number one brand.
All right. So those are all good beers.
People got used to it in my place. You go into every place and you get what you get. It's like Pepsi and Coke.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's kind of distressing. Now, do you think that it's still that way?
Probably. When I later changed from the Tecate people to the Modelo group, and I told them the story, and they denied it. And, oh, no, we wouldn't do that. Well, the reason I told them is so they wouldn't try to pull it again.
Yeah. Give them a, I know what you're up to.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was a lot smarter then. I was, 8 years later, 6 years later or something.
Right. How long was the Alaska Diner in business?
Right around 9 years.
9 years.
I started in 2007. I opened in 2008, and I closed on Independence Day, September 2016.
Okay. And was that a relief for you, or did you miss it?
It was. I was trying to sell it. I was going to give away my business to my girlfriend, and that didn't happen. And then I was trying to sell the business, and nobody wanted it, no matter how cheap I went. And then this guy bought the building and kicked me out. So I was happy that I didn't sell the business, because I would have been a real jerk if I sold a business that got evicted.
Yeah, no, that would have
rapidly
been nasty. Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's the price we pay for not owning the building. You have no control.
Exactly. I know other people that would go into other people's businesses and operate their skills, cooking or entertainment or something, and they're always crying about getting kicked out or screwed over. And I would say, then buy my liquor license. Buy my license, and you won't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
But they never did.
No. Well, they weren't listening to good advice.
When I closed, one of my places that I went on Sundays, my only day that I was closed, was Morditas in Buenos Aires.
Yeah.
And Morditas came in while my number one waitress, who was bilingual, and my cleaning girl, who wasn't, they were helping me pack to move.
Okay.
And these people came in, sat down with me, Morditas, and said they had an idea, would I like to come work with them at Morditas? So they hired me and my number one waitress and my cleaning girl all at once, and I worked there for a year and a half till I quit.
In the kitchen, obviously.
Right.
All right. And I think Morditas is now they're calling it quits too, I believe.
Morditas closed again. They closed numerous times.
Yeah.
And this time is the only time he's offering to sell every stove and refrigerator and the pizza oven and everything. I'm going to the sale Sunday.
He really means it this time.
He really means it this time.
Yeah.
He's getting too old to work, although he loves working.
Yeah.
But it's just too frustrating.
Don't we?
Yeah, that's why I don't work anymore. I'm happy. Now I'm doing freelance prime rib dinners. My prime rib dinner was featured hundreds of times on TripAdvisor. They talked about my steaks or my prime rib.
So let's talk a little bit about prime rib, because I do know about your prime rib dinners. What's your secret? What's your secret to making a good prime rib?
The first thing is I only buy aged beef. Ever.
Okay.
And there's a lot of not aged beef.
Right.
I also don't buy beef that's been previously frozen or water added or dyed.
Okay.
Those are all really common down here. And I think of all the people that have prime rib, that it's not lip smacking good, those are their first downfall. I happen to have a tenderizing and a flavoring technique, a seasoning technique that was mine, but it doesn't mean that all the others aren't excellent too.
Right. All right. So that's it. You make sure that you get yourself a fresh piece of good beef.
Well, actually, not fresh because it's
Or
aged.
aged. So how do you age? How do you age a piece of beef like that?
A real vendor, like one company was called Juicy, Gusi.
Okay.
And they would have all their meat hanging for anywhere from 10 to 35 days. And it's an aging process you do in a giant walk-in refrigerator type place.
Okay.
There's other ways to age. There's dry aging. There's things on the internet how you can do it yourself. Many restaurants have done it themselves for years.
Yeah.
Mr. Steak was an example in the U.S. They aged all their own beef. They bought it fresh off the hoof, and they aged it themselves to perfection.
Yeah.
So the aged beef I was buying was already aged. The Mexican beef that's not Costco is aged about 15 to 20 days. Costco's probably 30 to 40 days, and you pay for it.
Right. Okay. And so when you're here, is that where you're buying? Are you buying it from Costco, or are you buying from?
No. I'd have to sell it for 500 pesos a portion.
So you run off. You got yourself a good butcher.
Right. I had a couple good vendors that had aged beef, and they respected me. I even got one guy to give me a discount when the parent corporation that he worked for raised their prices 30% just on ribeye. Not on filet mignon, not on T-bones, just on ribeye. They raised it 30%. So I went to another branch of the same vendor, and I told the guy I want to buy about 4 or 5 every single week. And can I get a discount? And he goes, sure. Just like that, I got 25% off.
Dang! Look at you, man. You have to ask for it, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt. And look at you. You made a killing. Didn't even know it. So these places that you do the guest chefing at, where are you at now?
Well, I did one at Kelly's Por Favor.
Okay.
And it was quite a challenge because it's a new kitchen with new problems and everything else. And it somehow I pulled it off, and it was very popular. And then I followed that with one down at Irma's in Paso Ancho. And I also had more of a unique experience at that place getting that one fixed. So both places have fixed the problems that we ran into. And I have one more planned for Irma's the end of January, and another planned for Kelly's Por Favor at the middle of February.
I've never heard or been to Irma's. Tell me about Irma's.
Irma's is new. She's been a waitress around town forever. She's been a lot of places. I met her when she was at Gringo Loco. But I know she used to work at El Rio and a bunch of other places. Her place is across from El Rio Barbecue. And
okay.
it's the house she grew up in, and the whole bottom floor has been converted into a restaurant.
And what's she making?
She's famous for tamales.
Oh, okay.
All right, so she's famous for tamales and a lot of Mexican food, a lot of classic, inexpensive Mexican dishes. And she's just barely getting started. I don't think she's been there 2 months.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Well, look for her across from the barbecue. And I'll have to look for it too.
Fortunately for her, that's some of her business. They go to the Rio Barbecue for the music and the food and the drinks, and they come over to her place and continue drinking or eating there.
Yeah,
she's
exactly.
Morditas had the same type of crowd. Everyone would go to Rio Barbecue, and when it closed, because the music closes early there, they'd just flood Morditas on Saturdays and Sundays.
Ah, okay. So you also said that you're into music and that you're a musician. I see you've got a bass. You got a stand-up bass over there, even. So,
I do. I've got like 3 basses here.
Yeah. So do you play? Do you get ever chance to? You member a band? You do anything like that?
I was in bands in Juneau, Alaska. I was in a house band that played at a particular pretty hardcore bar. A lot of drunks, a lot of wildness, really loud. House band there for 4 years or more. I had probably 4 bands in Juneau, Alaska, all with the same name. We were all called the Swingers. And we all did classic rock. And then I moved to Mexico. I built the best bass amp I'd ever had in my life, and it's never been to a gig. And then I moved to Mexico, and that amp sat in my closet at Alaska's Diner, and about once a month I'd turn it on and play in the restaurant on a Sunday when I was closed. And now at my house, it's in my living room, and I have my my music hooked up to the stereo, and I play Spotify and things like that, and I jam along to the canned music.
Nice.
And
All
I
right.
just don't seem to play with any humans.
No. Well, that's no good.
Yeah, one time I took my amp to Nacho Daddy for JR's birthday party.
Yeah.
And JR made it sound like everyone's invited to jam. And I was there a couple hours and no one had jammed yet. And so I packed up my stuff and went back home.
Oh, no. Because that's not a lightweight little unit you got in there.
Oh, it was silly. Sean tried to ridicule me for having such a big monster.
All right. Hey, you know what? Let's take a little break from Alaska Diner and all those little memories there. Let's go out into town, because a lot of people listen to this show just for advice on where to go to eat. And Alaska Diner's not around anymore. It sounds like Mordita's is gone, even their stove and all that other good stuff. So if you had maybe one or two or even three of your favorite breakfast, lunch, or dinner places to share with us, that would be really cool. Where do you go for breakfast?
I go to the Salty Seas for breakfast. I go to Que Pasa for breakfast. I go to the Cigar Factory and also Encanto. Those are my favorite breakfast places because they do the best American breakfast, which is what I'm looking for.
Okay. So when you say American breakfast, you're just talking bacon, eggs, hot cake kind of thing.
And hash browns.
Oh, it needs to have hash browns.
Right. And they should be brown.
Yeah, and crunchy, right?
Right. And also, places like that have cooks who know how to control the temperature for cooking eggs, and you don't get these brown, overcooked eggs.
Right.
Occasionally, I go to a place, and I took 5 friends to one of my favorite places that had some new cooks at that time, and they stuck their fork in the yolk and lifted it up and said, "I don't think this is over easy." And the waiter goes, "No?"
No.
So eventually I quit going to that place for about a year until they got new employees.
Right. So those other places that we were talking about, they all have good, crunchy, well done hash browns.
They all have good hash browns, right? And they also have temperature control on the eggs.
Yeah. All right.
Just not overcooked.
All right. Well, those are great. Actually, those are great suggestions for breakfast, and several of them are really close to you. So it's just it's a little hop, skip, and a jump.
It's exactly. I walked to breakfast, all over the place in Old Town.
Yeah. All right. So what about lunch? What's your favorite lunch spot or spots?
Oh, some of these people change when they have new employees, and then they change the menu. So I was going to certain places for burgers, and those places have all changed their burgers. And so I don't go out much for lunch.
Okay. All right. So here's a disappointed luncher. What about dinner?
Dinner, once again, probably those same gringo bars, Que Pasa and Gringo Loco. I've eaten a couple times at Monchi's.
They do good burgers over there at Munchie's, actually.
They do.
Yeah.
Right. And when I have friends visiting, I try to go to a little bit nicer places. I like Adobes. I like Martini and Fuego. When I have friends that want a little bit nicer place, we always go to Trio.
Nice.
I've never been to some of the cooler places like Siam or Bravos because they're usually full during the tourist season when my friends are visiting.
You could probably get in right now.
Right. I plan to go next week.
Well, there you go. You see, here he goes. He's got Bravos, and he goes across the street to Martini and Fuego, and then across the street again, back over to Siam Thai and all that.
And Adobes.
And Adobes. All right, so those are great. What about? Do you ever do you go out for? Are you a coffee drinker? Do you ever go out for coffee?
Well, some of the places that I go for breakfast, I go because they have the best coffee. I'm a real coffee lover. I love great coffee. So in Canto and the Cigar Factory, by far have excellent coffee.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, I was just at the Cigar Factory and had a cup, and you're absolutely right.
Great coffee.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll keep you awake all day though, so watch it.
Yeah, right. Now, when I have friends visiting, we'll go for places like El Rio Barbecue because of the live music and they have the best ribs. Yeah. But I don't really go it's close. It's just a hop, skip, and a jump on the bus that stops in front of my house. But I just don't seem to go that far to eat very often.
Right. If you had a day off and we're going to go, of course, you being a retired guy, every day is a day off for you. But if you had a day to go wherever you wanted to and come back, where would you go and what would you do?
Boy, I don't go very far. I suppose I just go to I'd go to like Bucerias or Nuevo and scout around there.
Yeah.
I've never been to Maito. I've only been to Sayulita once.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, come on. Really, Roger? How long have you been here?
I've been coming since 99. I've been living here since 2007.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, we got to get you out.
If I had more days off.
Yes. If you had 3 days. If you
I
had
would
3
take
days
a
or
trip.
more.
Right. I would take a trip to Guadalajara and goof off there. Go to all the stores and shops because I like the fact that if you have an interest, like let's say shoes, there's 4 blocks of nothing but shoes. Being an audio guy, there's one street that's got, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 blocks long of nothing but audio stuff.
Whoa. No kidding.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean audio stuff? Like equipment?
Amplifiers and speakers and repair shops. I've taken stuff to Guadalajara that I couldn't repair myself. Oh, I guess I should have said I do audio repair.
Ah, okay.
I fix all the tube amplifiers in Puerto Vallarta.
There's still some?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Unfortunately, all the tube amplifiers in Puerto Vallarta are almost all these Chinese replicas that look like the original, but they're really difficult to work on.
Okay.
And people smarter than me refuse to work on them.
There you go.
So when I have a problem I can't fix, I save it all up and I take a trip to Guadalajara and I go to these shops and they fix everything. And it's just really cheap, really good work.
So there you go. You just, have someone else do your work for you.
That's right. Well, that's my own stuff. I have all tube equipment at my house for my amplifiers.
Okay.
And
right.
so it's a unique way of amplifying, and you have to have special parts and tools for them.
Really? See? I learned something new. All right, so Guadalajara and you just stay in town, like downtown Guadalajara? That's how you do it?
Yeah. In fact, the last time I was going to go, things changed and I couldn't go. That was in February or March. And I was going to go and I was asking all my friends for advice on where I should stay because every time I went there, I thought I overpaid in hotels and lodging.
Yeah. And did you? Or you didn't get there?
I didn't get there.
Oh, so you don't know.
Right. So I don't know. Right. And so, but I had friends that say, well, I'll just go with you. We'll go hang out.
There you go. That's the way to do it. And then you go, but I didn't want to go with you.
Right.
If you had like a word of advice for a first-time traveler coming to Puerto Vallarta, what would it be?
I would think that to stick with the touristy things, take the tourist tours, take those zip line, take the pirate ship, go on all those touristy things because they're really made for people like that, and they're fun. They're not very pricey, even in U.S. and Canadian dollars. And I'd say like go to the restaurants and bars on the Malecon. I think once you've been here a few times, you said first time, if you've been here several times, then you should go into Old Town, you should go into Cinco de Diciembre, you should go into the colonias and find these cool places to eat, cool bars that might have live music, once you've been here enough times. I still don't let my family drink the tap water, and I've been drinking it for 15 years.
Yeah. So you don't let them, because you're looking out for them.
I am. I keep a giant jug of water, so when I have guests over, I give them that water, but I drink out of the tap.
There you go. All right. Well, if I ever move into your building, I'll drink out of the tap too. If you had a word of warning, like for a first-time traveler, what would it be? Or it doesn't have to be a first-time visitor.
I'd say
watch out. Anybody.
Yeah, I would say watch out for the people that know everything, the know-it-alls, and they'll steer you wrong. They'll steer you to their cousin's place because they'll say that's the best one, or they just literally have inaccurate information. I asked someone a while ago about which cantinas were open, and they said all of them. And then I named 5 that weren't. So watch out for the know-it-alls who think that they know everything there is about this.
Yeah.
There's enough websites to go to. especially now that Facebook has all these groups, to find out the information you want to find out about. Where can I go for this, or who does this?
Makes it easier for that first-time traveler. You, having had a restaurant, drinking goes on quite a bit there. Did you have any funny stories about, crazy shit that went on in your restaurant?
Probably. I had a lot of white single men come to my restaurant. Those are the people that all lived in the neighborhood that would either walk or bus to my restaurant and were my regulars, either my seasonal regulars or the year-round regulars. And I remember one time I had this older guy who was probably medicated, because he's old. He's taken who knows what kind of medications for old people take. And he drank way too much, and he'd start during the day and be at my place the last place of the day. And he just got plowed, and he fell over, and we had to try to pick him up, and he was getting cranky about it. Anyway, he insisted that another person had dosed him. Oh no, I think so and so put something in my drink, and because we had words one time, and I bet he's mad at me. And we go that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. No one's gonna get up from their seat, walk all the way across the restaurant to your place, and drop something in your drink, and then go back unnoticed. And we still laugh about that particular story.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Everybody needs a good excuse for tying one on and falling down all the time.
Right. Well, my place, we serve strong drinks. I had a philosophy on how I opened my restaurant. Part of my business plan was to always give everyone a good deal. And when booze, inexpensive booze, is really cheap, give them all a good, strong drink. So the type of bars that I continue to go to all give a really strong drink. It's not that hard. It's a good way to success. People come here on vacation for a day or a week or a month, and they drink more here than they would have at home. I have friends who say, I never drink when I'm at home. I haven't had a drink in 3 months. And then they come here and they want good, strong drinks. So just give it to them when you can afford it. Like when you're in a hometown bar, you're not on the Malecon, you're not on the beach. So your rent and your overhead in a hometown bar is pretty economical. It's easy to give everyone a really good deal.
Yeah, so that's a good advice. Also, is just to get off the Malecon sometimes and get out in the neighborhood and find yourself one of those neighborhood bars. And we've been to almost all of these neighborhood bars that Roger just talked about. So, and they're great. They're nice little places, safe places, and clean places, as a matter of fact. So.
And they speak English, which is really handy if you come from another country and English is your only language.
Yeah.
Speaking louder doesn't really help you get through.
It never has for me either. All right. Well, I guess my next question to you is: do you have anything else to add? You got anything else you wanna say before we say goodbye today?
I think that Puerto Vallarta is a really safe place to visit. People don't get knocked down and robbed even when they're stumbling down the streets drunk and deserving it. Not as much as they would in a zillion cities north of the border in the U.S. and Canada. There's a lot of people that are willing to help you. If you fall down the street, someone who doesn't even know you will ask you if you need a hand. Most of them won't take your wallet.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you for coming and sharing your story with me. It has been a few years for me to track you down and get you to sit down, but I'm really happy that we were able to tell the story of Roger Alaska and Alaska's Diner, and all the great information is, well, it's really appreciated by my listeners. I truly appreciate it.
It's an opinion, but I've earned some of my opinions, and I'm always glad to help people and share what my experience is with them.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Roger, and nos vemos, amigo.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Roger. Thanks for finally talking with me about your adventures and about opening up a business. And for those of you thinking about opening your own businesses in Mexico and Puerto Vallarta, maybe renting a place or hiring a contractor, what a lot of valuable information Roger had for you, right? Like watch him like a hawk. I have links to the places that Roger talked about in the show notes, as well as a few pictures of the old Alaska Diner. I even have a couple pictures of JR in the old Alaska Diner having some fun too. And we're gonna be on the lookout for Roger's guest appearances as chef for a day or a week or whatever he's going to be doing, guest chefing. But I'll let you know if I hear about that in the coming weeks. All right, well, that should do it for this week. Next week, stay tuned for more on-the-ground reports from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, with travel tips, great restaurant excursion ideas, and more. But until then, remember that this is an interactive show where I depend on your questions and your suggestions about all things Puerto Vallarta. If you think of something that I should be talking about, well, please reach out to me by clicking on the Contact Us tab and sending us your message. And remember, if you're considering booking any type of tour while you're in Puerto Vallarta, well, you must go to vallartainfo.com. That's JR's website, and reserve your tour through him right from his website. Remember, this is a value-for-value proposition, my friends. His experience and on-the-ground knowledge of everything Puerto Vallarta in exchange for your making a purchase of a tour that you would do anyway. You're just doing it through him as a way of saying thank you. Thanks, JR, for being our guide. It costs no more than if you were going to use someone else, so do it. Really. And when you do take one of these tours, email me about your experiences. Maybe you can come on board and share with others what you liked or didn't like about the tour. Again, contact me by clicking on the Contact Us tab and sending us a message. And don't forget, JR has his maps, his DIY tours, his revitalized happy hour board, and more. And I have links to all of those in the show notes. And once again, if you like this podcast, please take the time and subscribe and give me a good review on iTunes if you will. That way we can get the word out to more and more people about the magic of this place, Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Remember, I made it easy for you to do just that with each episode I create. But if you haven't been to my website, you really need to have a look there. I have links to the places we talk about, interesting pictures, and more, all right there in the blog post and in the show notes for each episode of the show. So check them out for sure if you haven't already. All right? All right. Thank you so much, Roger Alaska. Thanks for talking with me. Thanks for giving us some tips on how a gringo might need to deal with Mexican contractors. Don't make those mistakes, folks. And thanks for sharing your memories and your story, of course. And thanks to all of you for listening all the way through this episode of the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. This is Barry Kessler signing off with a wish for all of you to slow down, be kind, and live the Vallarta lifestyle. Nos vemos, amigos.
De Puerto Vallarta, noche de arrullo en el mar, samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de amor junto al mar. Solo camino, perno por la playa, me encuentro junto al río, cuando todo está en calma, pronto cae la noche, me brillas Puerto Vallarta, samba de Puerto Vallarta.